Billionaire finds black nurse frozen in the snow and takes her home. What happens next? This story tracks Tiana Reed, a diligent black nurse whose frozen, empty-pocketed wait at a bus stop collides with Dominic Hale, a billionaire tech CEO haunted by a father's Alzheimer's and stalked by rivals hungry for his AI breakthrough. Their sudden alliance will force them to trust to fight and to discover whether compassion can survive corporate sabotage and fear. Tiana's fingers had gone numb long before she noticed the tremor in her jaw. She pressed her palms under her thighs, trying to trap what little warmth still clung to her scrub pants. The bus stop shelter, 3 cracked plexiglass panels, and a bent metal bench offered no protection from the wind that roared down Girard Avenue at 2:34 a.m. She had counted every minute since she checked the digital display next bus 58 minutes. In daylight, that was a mild annoyance. Tonight, it felt like a verdict. Her wallet, phone badge, and even the emergency 20 she kept folded inside her sock were gone lifted, while she'd nodded off during a 15-minute break in the staff lounge. One careless nap, and now she was stranded in a part of the city that emptied after midnight. Headlights flared across the ice-slick curb. A black SUV glided toward her engine, humming like a low cello note. Panic pinched her gut. No witnesses, no phone, but escape meant stepping farther into the dark. The passenger window eased down. Behind it sat a man around 30, hair neatly clipped coat collar, dusted with snow. "You look frozen," he said, voice even, but urgent. "The next bus isn't worth waiting for. May I give you a ride?" "No, thank you." Tiana answered, though her teeth tapped together, betraying how badly she wanted heat. "Stranger danger, 101, she reminded herself. "I get it," he said, lifting both hands off the steering wheel to show empty palms. "Dominic Hale. I own Hale Dynamics downtown. Late meeting ran over. I'm heading home. At least, let me call you a car." That name rang bells. She'd skimmed profiles of Dominic in hospital magazines, the billionaire who refused to sell. Yet magazines also embellished. Reputation wasn't proof. Snow spiraled harder. Her legs tingled. A sign circulation was faltering. "There's a diner, 2 blocks up," she said, bargaining with herself as much as with him. "If you're truly a good Samaritan, drop me there." "Deal." He produced a business card against the dashboard light, sliding it through the gap. The card felt thick, real, not the flimsy kind scammers carried. Tiana weighed the risks, exhaled a cloud of white, and climbed in. Heat wrapped her like a blanket the moment the door sealed. She fought an impulse to sigh in relief. Dominic kept the SUV at a cautious crawl over black ice, asking nothing, studying the road. After a minute, he broke the silence. "I noticed the badge on your scrub top, Mercy General." She nodded. "My mom was a nurse 20 years. Nights were brutal on her." The unexpected empathy eased the knot in her chest. "Double shift tonight," she admitted. "Someone robbed me during my break." Dominic's knuckles whitened around the wheel. People who keep the city alive shouldn't fear that. The conviction sounded genuine, not rehearsed. 5 minutes later, the diner's neon sign flickered them inside. Booth vinyl squeaked under Tiana's weary frame. Dominic slid opposite. He waved off her protest and ordered coffee soup and a turkey club for each of them. Steam from the mug thawed her throat, loosening words she'd meant to keep private. She spoke of her grandmother Ada's failing kidneys, the 3 jobs that barely paid insurance, the constant math of bills versus hours she could stay awake. Dominic listened, really listened, eyes steady. No phone glances. When she paused, embarrassed at unloading on a stranger, he leaned forward. "What if you worked fewer jobs for more money? My father needs private care. He's slipping fast, and he trusts nurses more than doctors now. I could hire anyone, but I'd rather hire someone who understands long nights and still shows kindness." He named a salary that made her vision blur, a year of debt erased in months. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I watched how you thanked the waitress, how you made sure she wasn't rushed. That tells me enough." Outside, wind rattled the windows. Opportunity and danger felt like twin pulses racing in her veins. Dominic slid a second card across the table, this one with a handwritten cell number. Think about it. Tonight you get a hot meal and a safe ride home. Tomorrow call if you're interested, or if you just need help replacing what was stolen. Tiana traced the raised ink of his name, weighing trust against survival. The bus stop already felt a lifetime away, yet dawn was hours off, and her future hung in the fragile space between two strangers and a steaming bowl of soup. Tiana closed her fingers around Dominic's card, slipped it into her scrub pocket, and finished the last spoonful of soup. The diner clock showed 3:18 a.m. When she stood, the weight of exhaustion nearly buckled her knees, but the SUV's heater gave her strength enough to make casual conversation on the ride. Dominic took the long way so she could point out landmarks, proof that he wasn't memorizing her exact address. When they finally reached Ada's narrow duplex, Christmas lights from 3 winters ago still framed the porch. Dominic waited while Tiana unlocked the door, then stopped her with a gentle question. "Do you want me to walk you in?" She almost said no, pride pricking, but thought of the empty street. Ada was at the kitchen table sorting pill bottles into a plastic organizer, silver-haired, petite eyes, sharp despite the hour. She glanced at the billionaire in the doorway, noted the careful distance between him and her granddaughter, and offered a curt nod. "Thank you for seeing her home." Dominic introduced himself, shook Ada's hand lightly, and at Tiana's urging repeated the job offer with none of the sales pitch. Just the facts: private care, high pay, flexible hours. Ada's skeptical gaze softened only when he mentioned Henry's Alzheimer's. "My late husband battled that," she said quietly. "Tiana knows the routines." After Dominic left, Tiana brewed weak coffee and recounted the robbery, the diner, everything. Ada's first instinct was worry. Her second was opportunity. Good people are rare, baby, but rare things are often faked. Prey on it. Tiana did. She also photocopied Dominic's card and left a note describing his license plate just in case. Dawn tinted the curtains pink by the time she drifted into a shallow sleep. The knock came at 7:06 a.m., sharp and insistent. Tiana, still in scrubs, peered through the peephole. A man in an overcoat flashed a badge too quickly to study. "Detective Morrison. Need to ask about last night's incident." His tone felt rehearsed, like someone who'd practiced empathy in a mirror. Tiana cracked the door, but left the chain latched. "Which incident?" "Theft at Mercy General. We traced property to this address." He tried to peer inside. "Mercy Security hasn't finished their report," she said, pulse spiking. "Give me your precinct number. I'll call back." Irritation flickered across his face too fast. "Ma'am, time matters. Let me in." Ada's cane tapped the floor behind Tiana. "She isn't letting anyone in until the uniforms arrive," Ada said. "You can wait on the porch." His jaw clenched, but he turned away without argument, stepping toward a gray sedan idling across the street. Only then did Tiana notice another man in the driver's seat, camera lens angled at her door. She slammed the deadbolt and dialed 911. Real patrol officers arrived 9 minutes later. Fake badge and sedan were gone. The younger officer took notes, while the older one frowned at the pattern. "We've had corporate intimidation cases 2 neighborhoods over," he said. "If somebody thinks you're leverage, you both need somewhere secure." The second the police left, Tiana called Dominic. She expected voicemail. He answered on the first ring. She described the badge, the camera, the gut-deep dread that settled once adrenaline ebbed. "I'm on my way," he said. "You don't have to." "Yes. Pack essentials for you and your grandmother. You're safer at my place until we figure this out." Ada listened from the sofa, expression unreadable. He's right, she decided. Bulldogs bite the nearest hand. Let's not be the nearest. They packed hastily medications, uniforms, Ada's photo album, Tiana's stethoscope. Tiana hesitated over her nursing shoes, scuffed, but Lucky then shoved them in last. Dominic arrived in a different car, a navy sedan with tinted windows, and a driver who introduced himself as Harris, head of security. Dominic kept his greeting, brief eyes scanning the street. "They'll circle back," he murmured. We shouldn't be here when they do. Harris loaded their bags, while Ada double-checked the stove and lights. As the sedan pulled away, Tiana watched her block vanish in the rear window and felt both grief and relief. Dominic handed her a burner phone pre-programmed with emergency contacts. "No calls on your stolen line," he cautioned. "Whoever's after me might be watching." Ada leaned forward from the back seat. "Son, if you're dragging us into some boardroom turf war, remember we bite back." Dominic's laugh was quick, but edged with fatigue. "I believe it, ma'am. And I'm sorry this touched you at all. But you'll have full security at the house, and we'll brief the police with everything we know." Tiana studied him in profile. The faint stubble, the sleepless eyes, the steady hands that still managed the situation with military calm. Trust felt dangerous, but so did every other option. She closed her fingers around the burner phone, the way she'd closed them around his card hours earlier, tight like an anchor, and braced herself for whatever waited beyond the gated drive he called home. The moment the sedan rolled past the iron gates, the neighborhood changed from city bustle to hushed, tree-lined calm. Floodlights traced neat arcs across the snow-dusted lawn, and cameras rotated with silent precision. Dominic tapped a passcode. The garage doors slid open, revealing a tidy space, not marble and chandeliers, but shelves of old toolboxes, a pair of bicycles, and a battered metal sled. Inside the house smelled of cedar and coffee. Harris gave a brisk tour of the alarm panel and motion sensors, then slipped away, leaving the three newcomers in a warm foyer, ringed with family photos. Ada eyed a picture of Dominic as a gangly teen holding a science fair ribbon. "Did you win?" she asked. "Second place," he admitted. "Dad said losing teaches twice as much." They settled in the kitchen, steam rising from mugs Harris had thoughtfully brewed. Dominic laid out everything on a walnut table, printouts of threatening emails, photos of shadowed figures near his office, a typed timeline of attempted hacks. Blackthorn Inquiry's letterheads appeared again and again. Tiana scanned the pages, pulse quickening at the pattern escalation every week. Dominic's voice stayed calm, but the vein at his temple throbbed. "They've offered to buy my company 5 times. Each refusal brings a new tactic. Last quarter they bought out 2 firms after gutting their security." "Why not sell?" Ada asked. "Because the software predicts economic shifts with 93% accuracy. In the wrong hands, it'll widen the gap between rich and struggling families. I built it to do the opposite." Tiana remembered him saying people like her mother kept the city alive. Now his conviction made sense. But another realization cut through her admiration. Blackthorn would use any leverage, her included. She set the papers down. "How long until they try again?" "Soon," he said. "Which is why I want you both on payroll, full security clearance, medical coverage. Harris already added your names." "Hold on," Tiana said, raising a hand. "Security can't replace normal life. My patients need me tomorrow." Dominic met her gaze. "Come with me first. Meet my father. Then decide." They left Ada resting and drove 15 minutes to Evergreen Residence, a compound lit soft amber instead of sterile white. The receptionist greeted Dominic by name and waved them to an elevator lined with pastel murals. On the second floor, they found Henry Hale in a lounge chair near tall windows, sunlight painting his silver hair gold. He wore fisherman's sweater and corduroy's fingers worrying a frayed handkerchief. His eyes tracked birds outside until Dominic knelt beside him. "Hey, Dad, I brought a friend." Henry's focus drifted to Tiana's ID badge. "Mercy General." His voice rasped but carried authority. "Good hospital. My wife trained there." Tiana crouched, matching his eye level. "Then she and I share good mentors." She offered her hand. Henry clasped it, grip steady. For 10 minutes he spoke of the birds. The music piped through hallway speakers, the way winter sunlight angled different from summer. His words tangled, sometimes looping, but Tiana followed his rhythm, affirming small details. Dominic watched, jaw unclenching each time his father smiled. A sudden flicker clouded Henry's gaze. "Do I know you?" he asked Dominic. Pain flashed across the billionaire's face. But he answered softly, "I'm the kid who lost the science fair. Remember?" Henry chuckled, memory sparking for a heartbeat, then faded again. In the corridor afterward, Dominic exhaled shakily. That was a good day. Some days he throws things. You calmed him faster than anyone. Patience, Tiana said, and respect. Alzheimer's steals names, not dignity. They drove back as dusk bled orange over rooftops. In the family room, firelight danced across Ada's knitting needles. Dominic poured tea for all three, then turned to Tiana. Please consider becoming his primary nurse. Flexible shifts, research budget for new therapies, whatever helps him. He slid a contract across the coffee table, compensation higher than any she'd imagined. Ada raised an eyebrow. Numbers look honest, baby. Question is, can you trust the man behind them? Tiana studied Dominic's tired but hopeful eyes. Then Henry's photo on the mantel. She'd felt the old electrician's fragile hand tremble until her voice steadied it. The work called to every skill she'd honed through endless graveyard shifts. Yet the risks, Blackthorn fake detectives' cameras, loomed like a storm front. I need one night, she said finally, to weigh fear against purpose. Dominic nodded. Take it. Whatever you choose, you're safe here. Upstairs, Tiana unpacked her lucky shoes, placed them neatly by the bed, and thumbed the burner phone. No new threats, no missed calls, just silence, and the faint hum of a house determined to guard its people. She lay awake, measuring the ceiling shadows, hearing Henry's laugh, and Ada's cautious praise echo in her mind, until dawn smeared pale gray across the window, and a decision took shape like steady heartbeat beneath her ribs. Tiana's decision crystallized with the first light sliding across the bedroom floorboards. She would stay both for Henry and for the stubborn hope that Dominic's fight was worth waging. She found Dominic already dressed for the office, mug in hand, eyes shadowed from a night without sleep. Before doubt could slip in, she spoke. I'm in. On two conditions: Ada gets full medical coverage, and I keep veto power if your corporate war threatens patient safety. Relief softened his shoulders. Done. And thank you. Their handshake lingered one heartbeat longer than necessary, sealing contract, and something less defined. By mid-morning, she was back at Evergreen, reacquainting herself with its routines. Henry had a slow start, confused and restless, but Tiana coaxed him through breakfast and a short hallway stroll. She left him napping and stepped into the corridor, just in time to glimpse a maintenance worker turn the corner, coveralls cap pulled low. Nothing unusual yet, a shiver crawled her spine. The man's gait was purposeful, predatory. She flagged a nurse. Do we have HVAC checks scheduled? The nurse shrugged, checked the log, shook her head. Tiana hurried to the security desk. Cameras showed the worker entering through a side door that required a staff code one only 3 people possessed. Moments later, the feed fizzed to static. She called Dominic. He answered on speaker while skimming quarterly projections, but his voice sharpened as she described the breach. Leave now, he said. Harris is 5 minutes away. Tiana complied, but guilt gnawed. Abandoning Henry felt like betrayal. Outside, she scanned the parking lot. A black sedan idled by the dumpster's windows, tinted darker than legal. As she reached the curb, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She ignored it. The sedan eased forward, driver hidden. Harris's SUV screeched in blocking its path. The sedan reversed tires, spitting slush, and roared off. Police arrived, took statements, and combed Evergreen. They found a janitor closet pried open and a tablet loaded with facility schematics. Detective Lynn, now leading the case, pulled Tiana aside. Blackthorn's shifting from scare tactics to direct leverage. They want Dominic desperate enough to sell. Her eyes narrowed. And your leverage. Dominic met them at headquarters, jaw tight with controlled fury. They crossed a line. Lynn laid out options: heightened protective detail, relocation of Henry to a yet more secure wing, and an official statement to shareholders before rumors spread. Dominic agreed, but insisted on transparency with staff. Panic breeds mistakes. Back at the house that night, Ada stirred soup, while the security team installed window sensors. She listened as Tiana recounted the day, then set her ladle down. Bullies push hardest when they smell fear. Stand straight, and they stumble. Ada's calm steadied Tiana more than alarms ever could. After dinner, Dominic joined Tiana on the back porch, breath clouding in the cold. I moved Henry to a controlled wing, biometric locks, on-site guards. But you should know Blackthorn filed an injunction, claiming my software infringes on theirs. It's baseless, but it gives them legal cover to snoop. Tiana's pulse quickened. Meaning more ambushes. Meaning they'll keep poking until they draw blood. She studied him, noting the tremor he disguised by gripping the porch rail. Then, we plan ahead. If they watch me, let's make sure they see what we want them to. A spark lit his eyes, strategy not surrender. They spoke until frost silvered the railing. Mapping contingencies, alternate routes. Encrypted comms code words Henry could remember on good days. Just past midnight, motion lights flared at the driveway. Harris radioed an all clear, but Dominic walked Tiana to her room anyway. At the threshold, he paused, voice low. I hate that you're in danger because of me. She answered with a tired smile. I chose this. Tomorrow, I'll remind Henry that winter always looks worse before dawn. Maybe you need that reminder too. His hand brushed hers, unspoken gratitude, and he turned away. Alone, Tiana sat on the bed, updating Ada's pill chart, when the burner phone vibrated. A text, leave while you can. No sender ID, time-stamped minutes earlier. She forwarded it to Harris, heart hammering. Response. We traced its origin, spoofed through a municipal router. They're taunting us. Rage eclipsed fear. She refused to be a pawn in someone else's boardroom game. She typed a new memo for tomorrow's session with Henry, cognitive exercises themed around resilience. If the war outside demanded steadfastness, she would teach it from the inside out. Downstairs, Dominic paced the study, replaying security footage of the sedan, each loop hardening his resolve. He paused over a still frame of Tiana in the lot, tiny compared to looming danger, yet squared in stance. He realized Blackthorn's miscalculation wasn't underestimating his wealth. It was underestimating the nurse who'd decided to stand beside him. Somewhere beyond the gates, engines idled, lenses adjusted, and anonymous fingers drafted the next threat. Inside, however, lines had been drawn, alliances forged in quiet kitchens and dim corridors. The coming days promised escalation, but for tonight, within layered walls and shared resolve, the defenders slept with eyes half open, ready. Morning broke with a brittle hush, but no one inside the Hale house mistook the quiet for safety. They rose from half-rested sleep, like soldiers after a truce that never truly held. Harris's overnight report listed 3 slow-cruising vehicles, and a drone that backed off when jammers engaged. Ada scanned the summary, muttered cockroaches, and flicked the kettle on. Dominic read the same lines, jaw set. Tiana, scrubs already on, asked the question hanging over them all. When do we stop reacting and start dictating the terms? Detective Lynn arrived before breakfast dishes were cleared, her coat flecked with sleet, eyes sharp behind sleepless circles. She laid a slender recorder on the table. Blackthorn's board chair, Garrett Voss, reached out at 4 a.m. He's pushing for a final sit-down this afternoon. We let him think Dominic is ready to fold, but Dominic wears a wire. She tapped the recorder. Get them bragging about intimidation, kidnapping plots, anything. We catch that on audio. We have enough for federal charges. Ada snorted. Rich bullies love to brag. Set the table right and they'll carve themselves. Tiana met Dominic's gaze. Fear flickered there, but so did relief, at last a plan with teeth. If you go, she said, I go. I can watch for the unexpected. Lynn eyed her, weighing risks, then nodded. Stay in the lobby far enough not to blow cover. Harris's team will be blended in, and my people will be placed as staff. Dominic tried one last protest. Tiana overruled him by reminding him who had spotted the fake maintenance worker. The discussion ended when Henry, enjoying a lucid minute, wandered in and clasped his son's hand. You do what's right, kid, he said, unaware of specifics, yet somehow perfectly on point. but keep someone wiser than you close. Everyone glanced at Tiana, who felt the mantle settle across her shoulders. 5 hours later, the downtown Meridian Hotel buzzed with business travelers, oblivious to the net of law enforcement laced through lobby bar and mezzanine. Tiana, in a gray cardigan that disguised her clinic badge, nursed a coffee at a corner table, eyes flicking from Dominic's suited back in the restaurant to every corridor. Lynn, disguised as concierge, murmured updates through a concealed mic. Dominic greeted Voss, and two deputies palms up in feigned concession. The wire nested in his tie pin hummed softly. 15 minutes in, Tiana noticed a housekeeper pushing a linen cart too close to the restaurant entrance uniform. Crisp, but shoes wrong, heavy black boots instead of soft soles. He paused, scanned, adjusted something beneath folded sheets. Her pulse spiked. Lynn, housekeeping cart at Southwest Arch. Boots wrong, she whispered into the lip of her cup. Lynn's response, seeing him. Officers readied. Yet the man pivoted, abandoned the cart, and slipped behind the lobby bar. Tiana stood, pretending to stretch. From her angle, she saw him emerge in a waiter's vest, balancing a silver tray toward Dominic's table. One hand stayed under the tray, longer than natural. Lamplight glinted on metal, a syringe cap. Adrenaline drowned caution. She strode into the dining area, voice, bright and loud enough to freeze every head. Mr. Hale, urgent call from the memory center, your father. Dominic's eyes widened instantly, reading her alarm. He rose, excused himself. Voss's deputies frowned. The fake waiter froze mid-step. Plainclothes officers converged, badges flashing. The man bolted, upending glasses. Lynn tackled him with a sweeping kick that drew gasps from tourists filming on their phones. Harris's guard pinned Voss as officers secured the syringe marked with anesthetic labels. Handcuffs clicked. Miranda rights echoed. Dominic, breath shaking, allowed Lynn to detach the tie pin. Plenty, she confirmed after a 10-second playback. Threats, blackmail, admissions, and a smug promise to neutralize the girl. Dominic flinched at that last phrase, but Lynn gripped his shoulder. They're done. In the paramedic bay, set up for precaution, Tiana's hands finally trembled. Dominic stepped in, face pale but unhurt, and the world narrowed to 2 heartbeats. You saved my life, he whispered. Again. She shook her head, tears stinging. We saved it together. That was the deal. Remember, news vans circled by dusk, hungry for statements. Lynn handled press, while escorting suspects into armored vans. Harris drove the battered but triumphant team home, under a sky rinsed clean by winter rain. Inside the foyer, Ada waited, slippered feet, braced like a general. Dominic folded Tiana into an embrace so tight, Ada's stern, "I told you so," dissolved into a sigh of relief. Later, after debriefs and hot soup, Dominic found Tiana on the porch, swing blanket over her knees, eyes on the moonlit snow. Funny, she said, voice hoarse, earlier today. I thought courage meant ignoring fear. Turns out it's carrying fear like a heart monitor, loud, constant, but proof you're still alive. Dominic sat beside her, lacing their fingers. Then, let's keep listening to it together. Beyond the gates, reporters packed up, and Blackthorn's empire cracked under federal charges. Inside, the defenders finally let their eyes close, not in vigilance, but in the unfamiliar softness of a night briefly free from siege. For the first time in weeks, dawn broke over the Hale property, without a single security alert. Tiana woke to the soft percussion of rain on shingles, and beneath it, a hush she barely recognized, the absence of dread. She padded downstairs, half expecting Ada or Harris to announce a new crisis, but found only Dominic leaning against the kitchen island in pajama pants, buttering toast with exaggerated care, as though ordinary living required rehearsal. When he saw her, relief flashed across his face, the same raw gratitude he'd shown after she yanked him from danger. They ate quietly, stealing glances that said yesterday had changed everything. By mid-morning, federal warrants hit financial news feeds. Blackthorn's executives were marched into courthouses, their assets frozen. Dominic's phone pinged every few seconds, shareholder cheers offers of partnership reporters begging comment, but he silenced it all and drove Tiana to Evergreen. He wanted normalcy, and for them, normalcy meant Henry. Henry was halfway through a jigsaw puzzle when they arrived. The overnight staff reported he'd slept soundly. No sundown agitation, no wandering. Tiana guided him through physiotherapy stretches. Dominic fetched coffee and watched from the doorway. At one point, Henry looked up, clarity sparking. "You're the one who keeps the night terrors out," he told Tiana. She squeezed his hand. "Team effort, sir." Dominic's eyes glistened. Victory over Blackthorn felt hollow, next to 10 lucid seconds from his father. Back at the house, Ada greeted them with a stack of mail and a raised eyebrow. "2 letters for you," she told Tiana. The first, termination from Mercy General, multiple shifts, missed no doctor's note. The second, a handwritten thank you from a patient's family, containing a grocery gift card and a photo of their newborn. The juxtaposition stung, but made the next conversation simple. Tiana signed Dominic's formal employment offer, on the spot full-time private nurse medical director, for emerging therapy's salary, more than triple her combined wages. Ada insisted on framing the offer letter above the fireplace. Weeks passed in a blur of new rhythms. Tiana split her days between Evergreen and the Hale home, coordinating music therapy, dietary tweaks, and memory games. She still woke at odd hours, half expecting threats, but each morning brought ordinary concerns: medication, dosages, therapy notes, whether Henry would respond better to jazz or soul. Dominic, freed from siege, poured energy into rebuilding Hale Dynamics' morale. Investors who once pressured him to sell now begged for shares, but he refused quick profit in favor of open-source licensing that let universities model social impact projects free of charge. Evenings were theirs. They cooked simple dinners, the 3 of them. Ada chopping herbs, Dominic learning to sauté, Tiana correcting his knife grip. After dishes, they walked the garden path, lit by low solar lamps. Conversation wandered from childhood dreams to future what-ifs. When winter yielded to tentative spring, Dominic began carrying a small velvet box in his coat pocket, waiting for the right moment. Ada pretended not to notice, humming love songs louder whenever he rehearsed lines under his breath. The moment arrived on a Sunday afternoon, fragrant with thawing earth. Dominic suggested a drive to Arborcrest Park, claiming cabin fever. Ada winked and shooed them out. The park's hill overlooked the city skyline, glass towers, gleaming like fresh resolve. They settled on a bench, Dominic uncharacteristically fidgeting. "Tiana." He began words catching on years of stoic composure, now useless last month. "You kept me breathing. This month, you're keeping me living." He produced the box, opened it to reveal a simple, brilliant diamond. "I don't know how to promise safety in every storm, but I can promise we'll face each one together. Will you marry me?" Rain from earlier had left the grass jeweled. Sunlight struck the ring and scattered prisms across his palm. Tiana's breath hitched. Life had taught her caution, but standing still had never been her way. She thought of Henry's fleeting lucidity, of Ada's faith, of the bus stop night when she'd gambled on kindness and won more than survival. "Yes," she said, voice, steady, eyes wet. 1,000 times yes. Dominic slid the ring onto her finger hands, trembling for once without fear. Applause erupted from a jogging couple who'd witnessed the scene. Dominic laughed, embarrassed, and pulled Tiana into a kiss that tasted of rain and resolve. They returned home to find Ada on the porch with 3 teacups and a knowing smile. "About time," she declared, ushering them in. Henry, visiting for Sunday supper, noticed the ring immediately and beamed, lucid enough to hug Tiana and declare, "Welcome to the family child." Dominic swallowed a lump so large, Tiana squeezed his arm to anchor him. That night, while Ada and Henry dozed in armchairs, Tiana and Dominic mapped a future on the dining room table, a small wedding scholarships funded by Hale Dynamics' new social impact wing, and most daring of all, a research grant in Tiana's name to study non-pharmaceutical Alzheimer's interventions. Each plan felt like a brick laid in permanent foundation, and each laugh that followed felt like mortar sealing grief into something stronger than memory. Outside, the world moved on markets trials, headlines. But inside the cedar-scented home, two people who had once met at the ragged edges of their lives drafted a blueprint for days, defined not by fear, but by deliberate daily choices to stay, to heal, and to love. They built that blueprint almost exactly as they'd traced it across the dining room table, small steps first, then the milestones that made distant dreams feel tangible. Within a month, Dominic's legal team finalized the open-source license. Universities from Lagos to São Paulo began feeding local market data into the algorithm, proving it could forecast staple food shortages weeks in advance. Tiana's name appeared on the masthead of a modest research grant, $50,000 earmarked for studying how personalized music therapy slowed agitation in early Alzheimer's patients. Ada, ever pragmatic, taped the award letter beside the refrigerator grocery list and teased that seeing her granddaughter's accomplishments while grabbing milk was the best kind of bragging. They planned the wedding with equal practicality. No televised spectacle, no celebrity chef. Just an April afternoon in the garden Henry had planted when Dominic was 9. The magnolia buds, timed miraculously, to burst open the week before. Harris and the security crew insisted on discreet perimeter coverage, but even they seemed relaxed. Blackthorn's executives were awaiting trial, and no new threats had surfaced since the syringe fiasco. Calm no longer felt like suspicious silence. It felt earned. On the morning of the ceremony, rain threatened, then retreated, leaving the city washed and bright. Tiana slipped into a simple ivory dress Ada had hemmed by hand, the pearl necklace Henry had chosen dangling above her collarbone. Dominic waited beneath the largest magnolia navy suit, and nerves equally crisp. When the string quartet struck its first chord, Henry stood unprompted and offered his arm to walk Tiana down the short aisle. Everyone froze, fearing the moment would slip away, but his gaze was clear, his smile steady. "I practiced this," once he whispered to her back, "when you were still a secret to us." She squeezed his hand, suddenly fighting tears harder than any night at Mercy General. Vows were exchanged in voices just loud enough for the birds to pause their chatter, followed by a single relieved cheer from Ada that broke the formality and drew laughter from every guest. There were only 30 witnesses, nurses from Evergreen, a few engineers Dominic trusted like siblings, and Harris's team in surprisingly well-tailored suits, but their applause felt like an arena. The reception unfolded in the same backyard. Fairy lights strung between trees Dominic had climbed as a boy. Ada delivered a toast, equal parts wit and challenge. "May you two remember half the advice you give everyone else, and may the other half be saved for emergencies." Henry, still lucid, raised his glass after her. "I spent my life fixing wiring," he said, "but these two have rewired my heart." He forgot the punchline halfway through and laughed at himself. The guests laughed with him, easing the stumble into shared affection. Dominic held his father's shoulders, steadying him, without making the gesture look like rescue. Later in the quiet, after cake and first dances, Dominic led Tiana down the garden path to the stone bench where he'd first rehearsed the proposal. Crickets had begun their evening chorus. Distant traffic hummed like a lullaby. He had one last gift, a weather-worn bus pass, laminated inside a silver frame. "Found it in an evidence box when the police returned your stolen things," he explained. "Thought it might remind us both where this started." Tiana traced the faded ink, remembering that bitter night, the hopeless chill, the split-second choice to step into a stranger's car. "We should put it somewhere visible," she said, "so every time life feels ordinary, we remember it's actually extraordinary." They agreed on the hallway wall opposite the framed employment offer and the grant letter, a triptych of turning points. Summer settled in. Evergreen's staff reported that Henry's good days now outnumbered the bad. Tiana's pilot study yielded promising charts. Residents who engaged in personalized playlists needed fewer sedatives, smiled more, wandered less. She presented preliminary findings at a regional conference, And when she stepped from the podium to a small standing ovation, Dominic was in the front row, clapping like a man who'd just watched the sunrise after a lifetime of rain. In September, on the anniversary of their first meeting, they returned to that bus stop now freshly painted by a city initiative Dominic quietly funded. They hung a discreet plaque, "Kindness stops here," and filled the shelter's brochure rack with free transit passes and a laminated sheet listing emergency resources for night shift workers. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just a gesture whispered into the urban night, "Someone is looking out for you." As they walked back to the car, Tiana slipped her hand into Dominic's. "Cold season's coming," she said, half teasing. "Think we're ready for another winter?" He rubbed her gloved fingers, the diamond flashing under streetlight glare. "We're equipped," he answered, recalling tire chains, security protocols, and more than those, the weight of shared resolve. She leaned against him, heart steady pulse, unhurried. The last bus of the night hissed to a stop behind them doors, sighing open for a solitary nurse in mint green scrubs. The woman clutched a thermos and looked exhausted, but determined. Tiana caught her eye, offered a nod that said, "I know this road. Keep going." The driver pulled away, taillights vanishing into the city glow. Snow would come, markets would surge and dip, patients would wake fearful and need soothing songs. But standing on that familiar curb, Tiana Reed Hale felt certainty settle like warm breath in cold air. Some nights begin in frost and fear, yet end in the clear promise of home, built not of walls, but of choices to trust, to fight, and above all, to stay.